When precision meets artistry, legends are born in seconds. What you're about to witness is the most incredible showdown in Hollywood history. Not planned by any director, not written in any script, but born from the meeting of two masters who discovered that true greatness comes in many forms. This isn't just about who could draw faster. This is about the eternal battle between technique and charisma, between being merely fast and being absolutely unforgettable. Subscribe now for more legendary moments when Hollywood's greatest talents collided and created magic that would echo through the ages. These stories of mastery and mutual respect will change how you think about what it means to be truly great. What happens when Hollywood's fastest gun meets America's most gifted entertainer in an unplanned showdown that reveals the difference between speed and immortality? On a blazing July afternoon in 1956, on the MGM Studios set of The Fastest Gun Alive, Glenn Ford was about to discover that there are two kinds of speed in this world, the kind you measure with a stopwatch and the kind that stops time completely. This is the legendary story of how charisma conquered technique and created Hollywood folklore forever. The summer of 1956 was scorching in Culver City, with temperatures soaring past 100 degrees on the sprawling MGM lot. Soundstage 7 had been transformed into a dusty frontier town for The Fastest Gun Alive, a western designed to showcase Glenn Ford's legendary quick-draw skills to audiences worldwide. At 40, Ford was at the absolute peak of his career and reputation, but his fame extended far beyond acting. He was genuinely, measurably the fastest draw in the entertainment industry. Ford had trained obsessively with Arvo Ojala, the master gunfighter who had coached every major Western star, and Ford had surpassed them all. Glenn's training regimen was almost military in its intensity, recalled stunt coordinator Yakima Canutt. 3 years of daily practice, same motion thousands of times, hand to holster, grip, draw, aim, fire, until muscle memory replaced conscious thought. The result was a draw so fast that studio executives required high-speed cameras to time it accurately, 0.4 seconds from holster to target. Officially verified. Never challenged. Until today. On this particular July afternoon, Ford was running his practice routine between takes. The set had been cleared for safety. Live ammunition was never used, but blanks remained dangerous at close range. Ford stood alone in the mock saloon, his Colt .45 gleaming under studio lights, while crew members gathered at respectful distance to watch the master work. Ford's draw was mechanical perfection incarnate. No wasted motion, no theatrical flourishes, just pure efficiency that created barely audible holster-to-hand sound, followed immediately by the sharp crack of blank cartridge. Each draw identical to the last, each one testament to inhuman self-discipline and thousands of practice hours. That's when Sammy Davis Jr. walked onto the set. Sammy wasn't supposed to be there. He was at MGM discussing a potential recording contract, but word had spread that Glenn Ford was practicing his legendary draw. At 31, Sammy was already America's most versatile entertainer, singer, dancer, actor, multi-instrumentalist, impressionist, who left audiences breathless with his range and capability. But few knew about Sammy's private fascination with firearms. Not quick-draw gunfighting, but something entirely different: gun spinning, manipulation, trick shooting. He approached firearms the same way he approached everything else, as an art form waiting to be mastered. Sammy positioned himself at the set's edge, leaning against equipment, watching Ford's practice with the intense focus he brought to studying any master craftsman. He wasn't thinking about challenging Ford. He was appreciating the beauty of perfect technique. Ford noticed him after his fifth draw, his acute situational awareness developed through weapons training detecting the new presence. He turned toward Sammy with a smile born of mutual professional respect. "Sammy Davis Jr.," Ford said, his voice carrying easily across the silent set. "I heard you were visiting the lot today." Sammy pushed off the equipment and walked toward Ford, characteristic energy evident in every step. "Glenn Ford," he replied with genuine admiration. "I had to see the famous draw for myself. The stories don't do it justice." Ford holstered his Colt with practiced ease. "Stories grow in the telling, but I appreciate the kind words." The crew exchanged glances, recognizing that two entertainment giants meeting casually on a Western set was the kind of moment discussed for decades. None suspected they were about to witness true legend. "I understand you have an interest in firearms," Ford said. "Arvo mentioned you've been asking questions about technique." Sammy's eyes lit up. "Not technique like yours. What you do is pure precision, pure speed. What I do is," he paused, searching for words, "different." Ford's curiosity piqued. "Different how?" Instead of answering, Sammy asked, "Mind if I take a look at that Colt?" Ford hesitated, not from distrust, but professional caution. His guns were precision instruments, balanced and weighted specifically for his draw technique. But something in Sammy's respectful tone convinced him. The moment Sammy's fingers closed around the grip, everyone on set could see something had changed. Ford held a gun like a tool, functional, efficient. When Sammy held it, the weapon seemed to transform into something alive, an extension of his own rhythm and energy. Without warning, Sammy's hand began to move, not in Ford's classical quick-draw motion, but in something resembling dance. The gun spun around his finger, flipped through the air, landed back in his palm with precision that seemed to defy physics. The crew gasped. This wasn't gunfighting. This was artistry. Ford watched in fascination as Sammy continued the display. The gun moved in impossible ways, spinning, flipping, twirling through combinations that looked choreographed, but were clearly improvisational. Through it all, Sammy's face showed the concentrated joy he displayed when performing any of his arts. "Where did you learn that?" Ford asked when Sammy finally brought the gun to rest. "Same place I learned to tap dance," Sammy replied with a grin. "Practice, patience, and understanding that everything is rhythm." Ford was genuinely impressed. He'd spent years mastering mechanical gunfighting aspects, but had never considered artistic possibilities. "That's incredible, Sammy. But what about speed? Pure draw speed?" Sammy's expression became serious. "You want to see my draw?" Ford nodded. What happened next became MGM Studios legend. Sammy took the classic gunfighter stance, but something about his posture differed from Ford's. Where Ford was mechanical precision, Sammy was flowing energy. Where Ford eliminated unnecessary movement, Sammy seemed to incorporate his entire body into the motion. "Count it down," Sammy said to the crew. "3, called the assistant director. 2, 1. Sammy's draw was unlike anything Ford had ever witnessed. It wasn't just fast, it was fast with style. The gun seemed to float from the holster rather than being yanked, moved through air in a fluid arc that looked almost casual, and settled into firing position with grace that made Ford's technique appear crude by comparison. The crew fell silent, processing what they'd witnessed. Ford stared at Sammy with mixture of admiration and bewilderment. "How fast was that?" Sammy asked. Ford shook his head. "I don't know. I couldn't time it because I was too busy watching it. That wasn't just a draw. That was a performance." Sammy smiled and held out the Colt. "Your turn, champ. Show me that 0.4-second magic." Ford accepted the gun and took position. After watching Sammy's artistic approach, Ford's own technique seemed somehow different, more mechanical, less alive. Ford drew with usual precision. The motion was exactly as always, perfect, efficient, blindingly fast. The blank cartridge cracked like thunder in the enclosed space. The crew applauded, but the applause felt different, respectful certainly, but lacking the awe that had followed Sammy's demonstration. Ford holstered his gun and looked at Sammy with new understanding. "I see what you mean about different approaches. Don't get me wrong," Sammy said quickly. "What you do is incredible. That level of technical mastery, that consistency, it's something I could never achieve." But what you do, Ford replied, is something I could never achieve either. You turn technique into art. The two men stood facing each other in the dusty set, mutual respect evident in their expressions. Around them, the crew sensed they were witnessing something special, a meeting of masters who had found different paths to excellence. You know what the difference is? Sammy said thoughtfully. Your speed comes from perfection. Mine comes from survival. Ford raised an eyebrow. Survival? Sammy's expression became serious, reflecting realities of his life as a black entertainer in 1950s America. Glenn, you learned to draw fast because you wanted to be the best. I learned because in my world, being fast means staying alive. Being impressive means staying relevant. Being unforgettable means staying employed. The weight of Sammy's words settled over the set. Ford began understanding that what he'd seen wasn't just artistic flair. It was the product of a man who had to be extraordinary just to be accepted, who had to turn every skill into a survival tool. Every performance is life or death for you, Ford said quietly. Every breath is life or death for me, Sammy replied. So when I hold a gun, when I draw, when I perform any skill, it's not just about being fast or accurate. It's about creating something so memorable, so unique that nobody can ever forget it or replace it. Ford nodded slowly, understanding the deeper meaning of their encounter. Your draw isn't just fast, it's unforgettable. Your draw is a number, Glenn. A measurement, Sammy said. Numbers can be beaten. But this, he gestured to encompass his entire approach. This is charisma, and charisma doesn't get measured, it gets remembered. Ford smiled, a genuine expression of admiration and understanding. Speed is a number, Sammy, but what you do, that charisma, that's immortal. The words hung in the air like gunshot echoes. Around them, crew members knew they had witnessed something special, a moment when two masters had recognized each other's excellence and found truth in their differences. You know what? Ford said, breaking the contemplative silence. I think this calls for a demonstration that neither of us will ever forget. What did you have in mind? Sammy asked. Ford grinned. A real showdown, not fastest draw, but best draw. You bring your artistry, I'll bring my precision. Let the crew decide which one they'll remember longer. Sammy's eyes lit up with competitive fire. You're challenging me to a style contest. I'm challenging you to be yourself, Ford replied. And I'll be myself. May the best approach win. What followed was unlike anything Hollywood had ever seen. Ford and Sammy took positions at opposite ends of the set, facing each other across dusty floor. The crew gathered in a semicircle, understanding they were about to witness entertainment history. Ford drew first, his motion a masterpiece of mechanical precision. 0.4 seconds of pure efficiency. The gun appearing in his hand as if by magic. The blank cartridge fired with perfect timing. Then Sammy drew, and time seemed to slow. His motion was fluid, graceful, incorporating spins and flourishes that turned the simple act of drawing a gun into dance. When he fired, it felt like the natural conclusion of a performance rather than the end of a technical exercise. The crew erupted in applause, not competitive applause, but appreciation of people who had seen two different kinds of mastery and understood that both were perfect in their own ways. Ford walked across the set and extended his hand to Sammy. That was incredible. I've never seen anything like it. Sammy shook Ford's hand warmly. Neither have I. Your precision is something I'll never match. And your artistry is something I'll never achieve, Ford replied. As they stood together, hands clasped in mutual respect, the crew began dispersing, chattering excitedly about what they'd witnessed. But Ford and Sammy remained a moment longer, two masters who had found kinship in their differences. You know what I learned today? Ford said. What's that? Speed isn't just about how fast you can draw. It's about how quickly you can make people believe in what you're doing. Sammy smiled. And I learned that precision isn't just about technical perfection. It's about making every motion count. The encounter between Glenn Ford and Sammy Davis Jr. on that MGM soundstage became legend, passed down through generations of Hollywood professionals. It was the day when the fastest gun in Hollywood met the most artistic gun handler in America, and both discovered that mastery comes in many forms. Ford continued his career as Hollywood's premier quick-draw artist, but those who knew him said his technique gained new dimension after that day, a subtle artistry that hadn't been there before. Sammy continued dazzling audiences with his versatility, but those who watched closely said his performances gained new precision, a discipline that enhanced rather than constrained his natural creativity. They had challenged each other and elevated each other, proving that true masters don't compete, they inspire. The lesson was simple. Speed might make you famous, but charisma makes you immortal. Numbers can be beaten, but artistry lasts forever. Sometimes the most important showdown isn't about who wins, it's about who learns. The guns were holstered, the cameras stopped rolling. But the respect between two masters would last a lifetime. In a world that often tried to divide people by race, by style, by approach, Ford and Sammy had found unity in excellence and friendship in mutual admiration. That, more than any quick-draw record, was truly unforgettable.